Genesis, book of Bereshis. We're holding on chapter 44, verse number 31. It'll come to pass that we'll see that the young boy Yehuda continues to speak, and he says it's going to come to pass, and it's going to see that his brother, that this young lad Binyamin, is not going to be there. But mace, he will die. Save us, Avadecha, and you'll bring down the old age of my father, Biyagan Sha'ela, in the grief of the grave. Rashi says that his father will die because of the calamity of what's happening. Verse 32, because your servant has assumed responsibility, took guarantee for this child. Minavi from his father. Lamer saying, if I'm not going to bring him to you, and I was sin to my father, all my days of my life, in this world, as Rashi said last week, in this world, in the world to come. Rashi says, now if you ask why I enter into this whole situation, and of all the brothers, I entered the situation of other brothers, I will reply to you that they are standing from the outside without commitment, while I have made a bond myself with a strong bond, which to outcast become an outcast in both worlds. Therefore, verse 33, V'ata yeshev no avadecha tachas hanat. Therefore, the best thing would be, let your servant stay over here instead of the young boy. Ever ladoni, I'll become a servant to you. And this young boy should go up with his brothers. Now she says, I'm superior to him in all respects, in strength, in battle, in service. I'm a much better person to serve you than anybody else. Verse 34. Because how can I go up to my father? And this young boy is not going to be with me. I might see in the misery, in the sadness, before my father without this child. Chapter 45, verse 1. Yosef could not bear to stand beside him, to all those that are standing beside him. When he called Ishmael, he said, take out every person, everybody should leave. Nobody was there with him. When Yosef made himself known to his brothers. Now he could not bear that the Egyptian would stand beside him and hear his brothers being embarrassed. He didn't want to embarrass his brothers in front of other people when he makes himself known. And he started to weep loudly. He cried so strongly. The whole Egypt heard it. In the house of Pharaoh heard it. Now she says the base part of the house of Pharaoh means his servants, the members of his household. And Yosef told his brothers, Yosef, I am Yosef. My father is still alive. And the brothers could not answer him because they were pashut, embarrassed in front of him. Actually, because of their embarrassment, they pashut start to move away from him. He said, don't worry, come close to me. He said again, Ani Yosef, I am Yosef. Achichem, your brother. Which you sold me Mitzrayim to Egypt. Now she says, Goshen alai, he saw them moving backwards. He said to them, now my brothers, don't be embarrassed. And he called them in a pleading way. And also, how is he going to show them that he was Jewish? He showed them that he was circumcised like them. He said, don't be troubled, and you shouldn't be angry that you sold me here. It was all to preserve life. Tochani elikim lefnechem, the Eibush to send me before you. I was sent here on a mission. I was sent here by God on a mission. There should be to preserve your life. Because it's already 2 years of famine in the land. And it's going to be another 5 years. That there's not going to be any harvest, plowing or harvest. Now it says it's only 2 years of famine that hit us. So you should realize that we're just in the beginning of the situation. Verse 7, and God has sent me before you. Lost is lachem, shade is baritz. So you'll have a remnant in the land. Lahacha is lachem lefleita gdela, that you should have a great deliverance. And that ends the Chumash for today. We're going to go to the Tanya today. We are still in the 6th chapter of Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us over here that everything that has in Kedusha has the opposite in Klippa, in the covering, in the darkness of life. Everything has a yin and a yang, has a plus and a negative. And therefore, to garment ourselves, right? We need to learn that we need to garment our neshama, the koyches and neshama, and we need to garment in thought, speech, and action. And if chas v'shalom, if we garment ourselves in the opposite of Torah, then we are we are clothing ourselves and connecting ourselves and giving life force to something that is the opposite of kedusha. Now, in Torah, something that is holy and something that is unholy is not like most people think that something that's unholy is something that is terrible. You did a sin. It's not true. What is holy is godly. What is unholy is ungodly, not connected to godliness. And therefore, therefore you have to know all words, all thoughts, which is not for the sake and the will of God. There's tam thoughts, it's not for the service of God, for His will, to the service of God. You might think, what are these words? All of these words that I say, which may be a lot of words, and all my machshavas that I have, could be a lot of machshavas, a lot of thoughts. Is pashut, when I have these machshavas, I'm simply garbing and giving existence to the opposite of kedusha. Shezeu pirush sitra achra. That's the meaning when Chassidus and Kabbalah, it's written, the concept of klippa v'sitra achra. Sitra achra means the other side. Pirush tzad achra. There's this side or the other side. Many of us think that there's this side and then there's something else in this side. There is kedusha and there's different levels of kedusha. Well, that's true. But that's when you do something holy and you can have different levels in holiness. But anything that's the opposite of holiness means not the opposite. Anything that is not for the sake of holiness is the opposite of holiness. She'eina tzad kedusha. It's not the side of holiness. Thus, whatever does not belong to the realm of holiness is sitra achra, is the other side. The simple meaning of sitra achra was like a harsh expression. But Sidim, you wanted to sort of say, hurt, give somebody a sting. You call them a sitra achra, or you call them a klippa. That was the curse word, the yeshiva curse word. You call them a klippa, you call them a sitra achra. It was an expression, the opposite of holiness. So that was a sharp, but the truth is, it's majority of our thought. The majority of our thought, majority of my speech is Pashat Klippa Sitra Achra. Is the other side of Kedusha. I'm not talking evil. I'm not talking hurting anybody. I'm not thinking about hurting anybody. I'm thinking about nothingness. I'm thinking about this, no total value. Is the opposite of Kedusha. And of course, Tzad Kedusha, Because the side of holiness, because holiness means Atem tiyu kadoshim, you shall be holy. What does it mean? That a Jew needs to think holiness. And what does that mean? It means Ella Shrav Am Shach is indwelling and the extension of God's holiness. And what does that mean? What does that mean? Sounds also very holy. And God does not dwell only on something which surrenders itself to Him. Whether the surrender is actual one, a visible even in the surrender being an external aspect, as the case of the supernal angel. And whether it's like the angels are totally bottled, they're totally nullified, they don't have their personal agenda, everything they do is a godly agenda. Tile being is constantly openly surrendered to God. Or whether it's the potential of every single Jew here in this world, this physical world, who has the capacity to surrender himself completely before God. The Mesiras Nefesh, as we see that Yidden go on Mesiras Nefesh, the Pearl Mamish, Al Kedusha Shesparach, to sanctify God's name. So we see ultimately that we have the capability, if we're ready to go on Mesiras Nefesh, if somebody's going to come to us and tell us, I want you to bow down to an idol, God forbid, you wouldn't do it. No Jew would do it. And a Jew would be ready to give up his life. As explained further in Tanya, every Jew has the capacity of such self-sacrifice. In the face of an attempt to coerce him to forsake Judaism, he's willing to suffer and go on the Mesiras Nefesh. Thus, every Jew possesses internally within his soul the potential to surrender to God. Why do we have that potential? Because that's our neshama. Our neshama does surrender to God. My neshama is a chelik elokam in my soul is a part of God, and therefore my neshama does surrender itself to God. And since I am a walking soul, I have within me this soul, so I have the potential to surrender myself to God. This potential, however, may reveal itself only in the act of chas v'shalom, a person putting a gun to one's head. Because he's surrendered to God, God's holiness rests upon him. And therefore our sages say that even if one individual sits and engages in the Torah study, Shechina Shruya, the God rests upon him. When one engages in the study of Torah, he surrenders to godliness, emerges to affect him in the revealed external level. Since such study entails setting aside one's notions and presumptions in order to understand and accept God's wisdom, and will be expressed as we expressed in the Torah. It's a surrender to godliness that causes the divine presence to rest upon a Torah student. And that's really the way a person should learn. A person should come to learn Torah, not to challenge God's wisdom. We're here to learn Torah. We're learning spiritual things, Siddur, Kabbalah. These things are godly things, ultimately very hard to comprehend. And if you can comprehend it at all, but we come, we come to learn. We come to put ourselves aside and to learn Torah. So we see that we can do that. We can have the capability. And as the Mishnah says, when you have 10 Jews that come together, then the presence of God rests always together. 10 Jews form a congregation of Israel, which is fit for God's presence. So that's the beauty of learning Torah. That's the beauty of coming together and davening with a minyan. That's the beauty of 10 Jews coming together in general. Because when Jews come together, it's not hard to bring Jews. It's not easy to bring Jews together. It's not easy to have 10 Jews come together and not to have an argument. 10 Jews come together and they can sit together. The Mishnah tells us really that 10 Jews that come together and don't even learn Torah. They just come together. 10 Jews come together. Allah can imagine 10 Jews come together and they're sitting and learning Torah. What they can accomplish in this world. Because that shows in their self-nullification. If you can come together with somebody else and put yourself aside and make room for another person, that is already an accomplishment. It's an unbelievable accomplishment that you can accomplish in your life. And that's what we should all try to accomplish in our life. To be able to do this aspect of having bittul, of having to surrender ourselves, to make room for in ourselves. But however, something that not surrender itself to God, but considers itself as if it's separate unto itself, does not derive its life force from the holiness of God. So where else would it receive its life force? Godliness and holiness is the source of vitality of every existing being. As written, you give life to them all. The Alter Rebbe goes on to qualify his previous remark, stating that those beings which do not surrender itself to God receive their vitality only from superficial, external levels of godliness. Here the Alter Rebbe introduced us to the concept of pnimius and chitzonius. Very important aspect of Chassidus. Two concepts of pnimius and chitzonius. There's an inner aspect and there's an outer aspect, external aspect. In Kedusha, there's an external aspect, a vessel and an oir and a kli. The vessel, the external aspect, is the vessel. The oil is the pnimi. The neshama and guf. The neshama and guf. The neshama is a pnimi, is an inner aspect. The guf is an outer aspect. Kol kvuda basmela pnimis. The neshama, which is feminine, the beauty of a neshama, the beauty of a isha, is a pnimius, her inner concept. Kol kvuda basmela, the beauty of a princess, is pnimius, is not her outer beauty only, it's her inner beauty. And that's truly what pnimius is. Pnimius is that why would a person connect himself to an outer expression, to an outer beauty which comes and goes or can get dirty, when you can have a concept of an inner beauty which never ever diminishes itself, which never loses its beauty. And that's what a person, that's why the expression we're saying in Eishes Chayil, Sheker Acheim ve'hevel ha'yefi isha yiras alakim hitasalo. So even in which we're talking about the neshama guf, that song is talking about the soul and body. That instead of only worrying about our outer expressions, the way people look at us, the way we look in a physical way, we should worry about the way people will look at us b'pnimius. What will people say about our inner aspect, our beauty of our soul, the beauty of our neshama? And that's the difference between a kedusha and the opposite of kedusha. Both are from God, and therefore both should be beautiful. Person should be beautiful, but his inner beauty should be brought out in his chitzenis. That should be what a person first sees, is not only his outer beauty, but the way his inner beauty reflects through his vessel. Because the truth is, your neshama cannot reveal itself only through this guf, only through this vessel, only through chitzenis. That's the only way. With the way my neshama, my pnimis can reveal itself is through my chitzenis. I'm not going to have a guf then my chtsenis will not, my pnimis will not be there either. But let us work on the pnimis. Let us try to work on the aspect of pnimis. So too in Torah also. So too in our connection with God. Shouldn't be only in how beautiful or what God gives me or not. That's chtsenis. But the inner beauty of Torah, the inner beauty of this relationship. So that we have in life the external and the internal from this level too. Only when it descends degree by degree through numerous contractions of life force, it comes into chatzenis, ultimately. To pnimis, so that's what Rebbe says. When somebody receives pnimis, Kedosh say, when you receive, to return to the Alter Rebbe's words, the self-style separate being does not receive its vitality from the pnimius, from the inner aspect of holiness. From the very essence of God. In the core of is God's glory, in the essence of God, it receives it, so to say, from the backside of God, from the hinder part of God. So lekim achedim, that's where the expression comes from. You shouldn't have other gods. Even other gods have its existence from God. How is there a possibility to even have other gods? If not that God gives it existence. But it's achedim. It's a lekim achedim. It's other gods. To bestow one's pnimis, literally one's face, means, as explained in chapter 22, is to give with a pleasurable will and desire. Acharayim, behind one's back, means to bestow without desire or pleasure out of some extenuating factor. The giver's attitude will be apparent in either case. In his manner of giving, if one gives something to his enemy, for example, he will avert his face from him, for one's face represents his inner feeling. Since the giver's heart is not in the gift, he turns his face away, presenting his enemy with his back, so to say. Thus, pnimiut and achrayim, in the sense of the internal and external aspects of one's will, are related to the literal meaning of face and rear. Pnimius and achrayim. Pnimius and achrayim. Sitra achra. The other side. In our context, everything that's in realm of holiness, whose existence and life God desires, receives its life and pnimis of HaKadosh. While klippos, in which God has no desire, since he created them only for the reason of giving, the paragraph introducing this chapter to receive, these are giving in. The reason given in the paragraph, we're going to soon see why, to give us a challenge in life. Receive the life force from acharayim of godliness. So you have two things in Chassidus. You have avodas haberurim. Explain. You have certain things that need to be a birur. You need to sift through it and figure out how to find kedusha in it. And there's certain things that are nisyanis, that are a challenge. The difference is that birur is a real thing. It's a gashmistic thing. I have to mevarer. I have to transform it. I have to overcome it. And a nisayon never is not. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. It's not a true thing. And that's all I need to do is to overcome this nisayon. That's it. You'll realize if I overcome the nisayon, it's not there. It's not there. So we can have in pnimis and acharayim also these two concepts. With the achedim is an avodah, is take service to work out the sitra achra, to work out the other side and to bring it to tzaddik kedusha. And there's a concept that acharayim have no. It's an illusion. It's not there. It's only there, like the stories of Avraham Avinu, that when he traveled, he thought there was a river, but ultimately, when he traveled through the river, it disappeared. It was in a sign. It was a test. So there's two kind of ways in our life. We realize mostly today, the Rebbe had an expression, said that avodas haberurim is over. We're now into the avodah of nesenis. Everything by us is a challenge. meaning that it really has it has no real entity. When something comes from Acharayim, when something comes from the other side, it really has no life force. If life force itself is an illusion, that's what we have to do, is overcome this concept. You'll realize it never was there. So the Eibishter comes down, so to say, in this Nisayon, the limited form of life force reaches to klippos by descending degree by degree. Revavis madregas, unlimited amount of degrees that it comes down. The to the descent of the world in a manner of cause and effect. So the higher level is the cause, for the lower level emerges from it. However, in the descent, which is a sequence of cause and effect, the effect always, although lower, is always comparable to the cause. Such that the descent, no matter how numerous, will be insufficient to produce a low level of vitality bestowed upon a klippah. This can be produced only by the descent of the vitality to tzimtzum, as the Alter Rebbe explains. So, cause and effect brings about a chain-like event, which ultimately all interconnected. Tzimtzum, the aspect of tzimtzum, makes space for the opposites. I make space, in essence, by me getting involved in not thoughts of Torah. What I've done now, I just made space for something that's not kedusha. I could have taken the entire space for the space of holiness, and now the Eibishter gave a tzimtzum, and it gave the capability, this tzimtzum rabim, vitality that I sense through many tzimtzumim or contractions. And this process diminishes the vitality to the point that it's incomparable, lower than its original state. So greatly diminished does this life force become, diminution after diminution, smaller and smaller, till it can clothe itself in a manner of exile. This light can come into a manner of galus. Meaning, instead of being surrendered to divine life force, the object which the vitality is closed masters it. As, for example, a captive in exile is mastered by his captors. And that's what can happen, chas v'shalom. I give so much space for my klippah that it gives the capability for the klippah to become the master. Comes my thoughts, my alien thoughts, my alien speech becomes my garment. That's what I am ultimately, chas v'shalom. That becomes who I am. I'm not a person who's a holy Jew, that talks Torah a whole day. I'm a Jew that talks Nanischkeit the whole day. I'm not talking any sins. I'm not talking about talking sins. I'm just talking about vanities. Just talk, idle talk. And the Eibishter gives life forth for that idle talk. The vitality is thus in a state of exile within the object which is considered itself separate from holiness, giving a vitality and existence, to causing it to pass from non-existence to existence. I've given existence to something that has non-existence. So it did not return to its original state of non-existence, as it were before it was created by the vitality that clothes itself in it. So the Rebbe writes in brief, all that did not surrender to God, but consider itself as separate from being from Him, receives its vitality from a chalaim of godliness by the way of the numerous descents of various contractions. A divine life force is concealed within it in a state of exile. And I have to realize that in essence, not only do I create klippah, but I give existence to klippah. I've now given I've created a concept of the opposite of holiness. It's not the stam. That's what people think. We might think we live in an empty space or an empty vacuum. No, there's no empty space. Just like your thought, there's no concept of thinking nothing. Either we think kedusha, or we're thinking the opposite of kedusha. So we cannot fool ourselves to think that I'm just thinking nothing. I'm not thinking kedusha. I'm not thinking something holy, and I'm not thinking something a sin either. So I'm just no man's land. In Torah, no man's land is also unholy because I'm giving existence to nothing. I'm giving something that has nothing existence. And that nothing has now become an existing concept in this world because I gave it a life. I gave it a life. And it could be, I can have a world. That's what you have in the Gemara. You have different people that are Ameratzim, Talmidei Chacham, people that learn Torah. They have Ameratzim, people that are connected to the earth. That's all they think is earthly matters. Then you can have a bur, person that's an empty mind. A bur, empty mind. As we learn, you can have an empty mind that has nothing in it. It's also dangerous, falling into an empty place that has nothing in it. And chas v'shalom, if nothing is in it, so you can have nechashim v'akrabim, you can have ultimately snakes and scorpions that come into this empty void. Because this empty void is also a concept. It's not just nothing. I've just created an empty void in creation. And so really, what is an empty void? What does an empty concept have? It has no purpose. It has no value. It has no value even in this world. It has no purpose. It has no value. But it totally became an entity. This emptiness became an entity. And I can create a lot of emptiness in my life. And this emptiness, I gave existence. And therefore, but it's not totally a negative thing. So therefore, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, I didn't do an Aveda. But I've created an empty space in this world. I created Tzimtzum. Abish, just like the Abish to create a Tzimtzum in the world, to be able to create the world, he created a Tzimtzum, created a void. And this Tzimtzum gave the capability for physicality that is an ayin, physicality that really is nothing, suddenly became a yesh. That's what we call a yesh me'ayin. This physicality that really has really is not a real thing. Ultimately, the Eibishter by Tzimtzum, by this contraction, gave the capability to have that it should be something. So Tzimtzum by the Eibishter, the God did a Tzimtzum. In his Tzimtzum was the ultimate aspect of Chesed, that the Eibishter created a void, and through that void gave the capability for something that is the opposite of him, something that contradicts him. And because he created a void, he created a Gashmi ultimately. Created a physical reality. And this physical reality is seemingly a yesh. It's seemingly something. But really, it's something for nothing. Because the truth is, it's only because of this void, only because of this tzimtzum, that we have this aspect. We do the same thing. We can do the same thing, a tzimtzum inside a kedusha. We create a space for somebody else. We create a space for God. In our yesh, we create an ayin, we create an empty space, but we also can create a tzimtzum that creates the concept of another yesh, that created something that really is a nothing. So just like there's a kedusha tzimtzum, the aspect of contraction, there's a concept of contraction that gives a capability of something that doesn't belong there, that suddenly now it's there, yesh. So everything, that's why you learn Chassidus and Kabbalah, that everything that is in Kedusha, everything that is in Kedusha ultimately comes down in our daily lives. It's when everything is Lamaila, that you learn Chassidus, that the only way there is a yesh is through this tzimtzum, through this, that the Eibishter contracted himself. But the Eibishter is in this yesh. That we are fooled to think that this is a yesh. The truth is, every yesh in the world, every physical thing in the world, everything that thinks it has its own identity, really, the identity is God. That's the truth of it. Because if God didn't give an existence, it wouldn't exist. And it exists because of God's existence. But this contraction gives the capability for this thing to feel its own entity. And even though it's void, it's the concept of an empty space. To be able to fill it within it, the true reality, which is a godly reality. So in essence, by God making this contraction, gave the capability of two entities for the yesh to feel its ayin, to feel its nothingness, that it's truly godly, or for the yesh to become a bigger yesh, for the ego to become a bigger ego. In which way? By creating the outer force of this ego, by emphasizing its independence, not its dependency, that it's a void. To be able to put something in it, it's a void for the void itself, or for God forbid, more worse than the void itself, to put in something that's totally the opposite of its true reality. And that's why you have free choice, because you are a true, every one of us is a true expression of God. So that you can do, that we, each and every one of us, can have either machshava teva or machshava ra. You can have a good thought or the chas v'shalom, a negative thought. That shows on the way you express your godliness. You can express your godliness the way God wanted in this aspect of tzimtzum, in this aspect of void, to put in it self-understood godliness, surrender itself to its source, or chas v'shalom, to put into it something the opposite, to make a space and create a yesh. That's when I create something, nothing to something. I created a nothing. I took something that's a nothing, that might be even something that not only is a nothing, it's a void. It could be something that I know that God is unhappy with it, and therefore God doesn't want a relation with it, and I made it into a something. Even in my thought, I'm not even talking about my speech. I'm not even talking about action. I'm talking even in my thought, I've created a nothing into a something. And that, the Eibishter gave me that power to do. And I could do it. And ultimately, it's ultimately translated into my speech, and it ultimately translates into action too. Eibishter gives us vessels in this world, physical things. You either can fill it with Kedusha, or you can create its own entity that has nothing to do with Kedusha. It's a physical thing, that it's a physical purpose. And God forbid, you can create this yesh into such a yesh that it goes against God. Chas v'shalom, you create a God, as like Kim, God forbid. You can take a physical thing and make a getchka, an idol out of it. Second commandment in the Torah, which we have the capability to take a physical thing, which is a yesh, but really it's an ayin. It really is created by God, and I create a bigger yesh. I take the empty space and I fill it with something that's the opposite of Kedusha. And that also has an existence. I gave it an existence. I myself gave it an existence. That's where I come into the picture. The thing, if I wouldn't have got involved, the thing would have been no man's land. Anybody can get involved. That I got involved and used it out in Shalei L'Shem Shamayim. I have now created this yesh into something that it wasn't. And I created a new entity in a way. I created something, a yesh me'ayin, my personal creation. And that's the avodah that I have. That's why we create the world. Malei klippos v'siter achros. That's why Chassidus explains that the world is full of darkness. We're living in a dark world because you humans have brought to this world darkness. We continue to do in Yonim, Shalei L'Shem Shamayim. I continue to do things for not the sake of heaven. So I continue to give a life force of something that is not a reality, or something that's in a reality, which I'm bringing out, it's not true reality. I'm giving it a fake identity. I'm giving it a fake reality in a way, which is a new reality to it. And I've dragged the thing down to something that it doesn't even want to be. It's It's now clear why any thought, word, or action not directed to the serving God, hence not surrendering to godliness, is a garment for the animal soul that rise from Klippa, even if that thought, word, or deed is not actually evil. We're not even talking about evil at this present time. The thought is just an empty thought. Just a thought of nothing. Not a sin, not thinking about doing a terrible thing. I'm just thinking not about godliness. That's it. Thinking about Hevel Avalim. Vanities of all vanities. And that completes the Tanya of today. A beautiful, powerful lesson in Chassidus. Today is the 6th day of the month. So your Tillim of the day is chapter 35 to chapter 38. And by doing those 4 chapters, you'll do the chitas of the day. Yes, I wish everybody that the world should come out from darkness to light. And not only in the spiritual way, but in the physical way. The world should be redeemed, maybe through our avodah of learning Torah together, and using our time for the learning of Torah will ultimately elevate the world. That we learn Chassidus, that by learning Torah together, by surrendering ourselves to the Eibishter, we bring down a light of God into this world. So I hope and I pray that all our prayers come into an action and bring about a salvation to the Jewish people, especially the Jews in Israel, that we should see a salvation there, a redemption, and a victory and a completion of the good over evil. And may we only have simchas and happiness. And I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful day. And Amid Shem, I'll see you all tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll continue the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful
Amen. Thank you so much.